My name is Tufan Turanli, and I originally studied business administration at Robert College, which turned to be Boğaziçi University afterwards. In fact, the director of the project, Dr. Cemal Pulak, also was my friend at school. He was engineering, and I was doing business. And we had a very close friend, a professor of physics named Donald Fry. And he was teaching at the school at that time. So in 1975, he said, "You guys, I'm working with National Geographic down in Bodrum. Why don't you come?" Actually, he first asked me. So I didn't have anything to do, so I said, "Okay, I'm coming down." And then I found that it was a fascinating, place. And he also asked me to find other people. So at that time, I knew Cemal Pulak, and he was interested in more technical people because there was a lot of technical equipment, diving gear, compressors, other equipment. So I tried to get the technically oriented people, and that was the beginning. And for me, I was planning to be there only for the summer and then go back to my original profession, that's business. And Cemal wanted to go back to engineering, but we couldn't. Life was very exciting. The work of underwater archaeology was stimulating. So we stayed, and here today, I'm still underwater, more than 3,000 dives that I've done. At times I look at the mirror to see if after so many dives and so much time underwater, if I have grown any gills, but nothing yet, so I'm not turning to fish yet, so I'm fine. I'm happy you asked me about how we found Uluburun Wreck because it's an important story. First of all, we are often asked, how do we find the shipwrecks? Well, a dive is short, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. A lot of people think that we just go and dive around and find shipwrecks. Well, that's not always the case. It's usually very difficult to find that way. Our biggest source, until very recently, and we're very grateful to them, were the sponge divers. In 70s and the 80s, there used to be close to 100, 120 sponge diving boats that would leave the harbor of Bodrum at the beginning of the summer season, like April, and go all over Turkish coast, and some of them used to go even to North Africa for diving. Well, of course, every boat there will be like 6, 8 divers, and then they will be diving from the sunrise to sundown, and invariably while searching for the sponges that they would bump into shipwrecks. They wouldn't know exactly where they were, but they would always, "Oh, I remember finding or bumping into a shipwreck at that place." Of course, shipwrecks were not exciting to them. They were interested in sponges. But during the years, we befriended the sponge divers. They never were technically that developed, and we, with our contacts with America, used to help them with their regulators, their equipment. But more important than that, we were people that were earning our livelihood or interest in the sea, so we used to get friends with them. I will say, until recently, maybe 9 out of 10 of the shipwrecks that we know have been told to us by the sponge divers. We found many shipwrecks. I don't know the exact count, but we used to do surveys every year, and I would say probably close to 150 shipwrecks remains. Of course, not every one of them intact. Some of them will be a mound of amphoras. Some of them will be maybe an anchor on rocks, but they would all be pointing us to a ship that at some point had an unfortunate moment there. In fact, when we started to ask the sponge divers first, "Do you know of shipwrecks?" they said no. Because one important thing to know is when we talk of shipwrecks of 1,000 years old or more, when you come to the surface, you don't see any shipwreck. Because a ship goes down, and if it's a wooden ship, after a very few years, the worms start to eat and it starts to dismantle. And most variably, it will be carrying cargo of amphoras, and then the sand will cover, and maybe at times there'll be only a few amphoras remaining on the surface, that's all. So we started to ask them when we used to ask the sponge divers, do you know of shipwrecks? They said, no, never seen one. No, never seen one. But when we started to ask them, did you see any amphoras, not even amphoras, any water jugs? That's what they call testi in Turkish. They said, oh, yeah, yes. So we started to ask like that. So we found ships from Byzantine period, we found Roman shipwrecks, but we always wanted to find the ultimate, the oldest. So how do we ask? We started to ask about ingots. Now, even ingots, they didn't make meaning in the spine divers' minds. We started to ask, have you seen metal biscuits? Because it looked like biscuits very much, with ears, right? Biscuits with ears. No, no, no. We asked constantly. At one point, I think the year was 1982, one said, yes, I have seen one. And where? The question was someplace near Kaş. And in fact, that was sponge diver Mehmet Çakır, who was going around there and then saw the wreck and remembered. So that's how the story of Uluburun started. Time passed and we learned the location and we went to Uluburun location. But until that time, even the longest of our excavation didn't take more than 3-4 years. So we went to the site of Uluburun and we go down and yes, there are biscuits with ears. We're very excited. And we saw a few of amphoras and then a few of the ingots. But of course, we guess based on our past experience, well, that doesn't seem to be that much here. Maybe the excavation will take a year, maybe 2 years we'll finish it. It took 11 years. And with Cemal Pulak, my good friend and the director of project, we even now talk about going back to the site. I still remember the first time we're going down, say, it'll take a year or two. Then 11 years, close to 23,000, dives on there. And it turned to be our lives because every year from 1982 until 93, we spent close to 3 months on those rocks. A lot of people think it's only archaeologists, but it is not. Think about a soccer team. Not everybody is there to do, make goals, only maybe a few, but there's a defense team, there's a goalkeeper. The same with archaeology, especially nautical archaeology, there's a lot of equipment that needs to be maintained. So we need engineers, both electrical engineers and mostly mechanical engineers. There's need for photographers. Sometimes we even had people with architecture degree because the most important thing with archaeology is making the map recording. I think in my mind, archaeology is proper recording. So those are the parts that are really more important. And so it was a team of very talented people of different professions. But in 1975, that is at least almost 20 years before Uluburun's story, we were more inclined to get engineers because our compressors need maintenance, and especially running any equipment in rough environment like sea environment, where the sea with the salty environment is very damaging to all those equipment. So our most important concern was to run the equipment successfully and satisfactory. So that's why Cemal Pulak had started. Cemal, Dr. Pulak, in my mind today, is one of the top nautical archaeologists in the world, had started as an engineer. So we used to fix compressors, the tools, and then we moved into other aspects of it. Working with the Institute, actually working with nautical archaeology, you have to wear many hats. For example, I was both the skipper of our research Virizon, but of course I was also one of the excavators. But on top of that, I am good with engineering and mechanics. I will be fixing the equipment too. I was also taking the videos underwater of the project. And plus that, during the winter, when we need to have the permits and things, I will be doing the government works. The same is true with maybe many of my friends. Jamal, the director of the excavation, is also a mechanical engineer. So he also helped with that. And sometimes at the beginning of the season, the ship needs to be painted. We all pitched in. So that was the exciting part. There was always changing, not a monotonous and single, position. What about a day on the rocks? How a day passes? See, the first thing, let's first look at the beginning of the season. All during the excavation of Uluburun, I was also the skipper of the skipper of the Virizon, our 20-meter research ship. I will go with a ship, and the wreck was 130 meters away from the shore. And then as the site goes deeper and deeper, at some points maybe down to 100 meters. But one thing that's nice about the wreck site is even though it's open to the sea, that's to the southeast, during the summer season, that's from June until mid-September, it never blows from that direction. It'll be blowing always from northwest. So we were protected from the Uluburun, the mainland. So I will drop the anchors, 2 anchors, and then get lines from shore. And then we'll tie the ship permanently in location. And for the next 2.5 months, the ship will be constantly anchored and moored there. Usually, I'm trying to remember, our team will consist of like 30-35 people. We might have 16 to 18 divers every season. Of course, there will be the cook, the cook's helpers. We will also have some members that bring the supplies back and forth. And there'll be few people that will be only be at the laboratory. A typical day starts early, usually 6 o'clock. And some people wake up a little bit earlier, and we used to swim to the point and back. I forgot, but I think it was like half a kilometer. I don't know. I need to check. But it'll be a good way of, waking up. We'll go and come back. And 7 o'clock will be the breakfast time. There will be a bell ringing. What is the bell? An old diving bottle that was cut in half, and it'll be run. So after the breakfast, around 7:30, time to go to the ship. We go to the ship, and then there will be a meeting. Jamal will direct the group, and then the dive plan will be made. Who will be diving first, second, third. And then we'll go to the ship, and then the first team will start getting ready, and then the dives will start to go down. The ship was deep. The shallowest part was starting at 42 meters. There was for a long time the concern that the ship hit the shore and then floated back and then sink. We checked very closely from 42 meters depth or the 130 meters to shore. We did not find a single artifact. So that wasn't the case. It wasn't during the winter time hitting the shore and coming back. Otherwise, we would have found the artifacts scattered. It's definitely the case that if we say that this is the Uluburun, the point hit the point and then slowly floated and then went down. So then it'll be lunchtime, and then the whole team will again go to shore. We'll either go in the dinghies or some of the people swam back, and we'll have a good meal. But the diving was always very tiring. Except very few exceptions, everybody took a nap at noontime. And because of that pressure's effect and thing, that we really needed to relax and rest. And then we'll come back again in the afternoon. And then I forgot, depending on things, we need to have a certain amount of time to pass for the built nitrogen to be out of our body so we can have the second dive. But the second dive of the day was invariably, even if it's the same time, the decompression would take longer. And the evening, I think the dinners were at 7 o'clock. But the people, the divers, most of them also worked in the laboratory, either cleaning the objects. We were doing the initial cleaning and desalination of the objects. And then, some people would be working on plans, and other people, technical people, would be working on the equipment and machinery. So it was a teamwork. Every shipwreck is a time capsule. It's totally different than the archaeology or excavations done on land. Because anything that's done on land, you're never sure if all the artifacts are from the same period. But a shipwreck that hasn't been touched, okay, it's on the shallows, but a deep one like Uluburun is a true time capsule. That ship went down 3,400 years ago, and it just stayed there, only befriended by fish and other underwater sea creatures until we came and found them. Whatever that was there at the Bronze Age, it was on there. There were elephant tusks, there were of course the metals, some gold objects, there were glass, there was everything. So we never had another shipwreck that rich and that revealed that much about Bronze Age. Whenever we find a shipwreck, of course, one of our first goals is, what is the date of this ship? Now, of course, when we find a shipwreck with emperors, based on the emperors, a few centuries plus or minus, we can guess if it's a distinctive emperor. If not, when we start excavating, we find coins, of course, that gets even closer. But with Bronze Age, we didn't have some of that luxury because there was a very standard Canaanite jar with a wider area. And talking about coins, well, we couldn't because the money was not invented yet. The money was not invented, but they were thinking about it. Because we found, for example, half of a ring that was cut very clearly, a gold ring. Of course, we knew the exact location, so the rest of the ring had to be somewhere close. But we searched and searched and searched, and we couldn't find it. We found some gold objects that were cut in quarters. Maybe one quarter was there, but the rest wasn't there. Where was it? But then we found out, or we think that they started to trade in valuable metals, but not like as coin, but probably they said, oh, I'll buy that thing, but I ask you one, ring. The guy said, no, it's not worth it. I'll give you half a ring. Half a ring? Chop. Here's a half a ring. But we did raise a lot of exciting objects on the wreck. But one should know that whenever we find it, we don't say, oh, this is this and that. For example, I'm so lucky that in 44 meter area, I raised the golden scarab of Queen Nefertiti. Of course, it's a bigger one. Actual one is like a little bit larger than 1 centimeter. When I found it, I said, that's exciting. But I didn't underwater say, this is saying that's Queen Nefertiti's. No. In fact, we took it out and said, we don't know. And Jamal immediately took pictures and things, and we sent it to scholars. And about a month, like 30 days later, we got the message saying that you guys are lucky. You found Queen Nefertiti's seal. This seal is very important for especially one reason. This is the first and only proof that Queen Nefertiti was actually in a position that showed that she was ruling or in a level that she was important. Because until that time we knew about Queen Nefertiti as the wife of Akhenaten, but we had until that time never proved that she actually ruled. So this is the first and only proof, and for that reason alone, maybe Uluburun Shipwreck is a phenomenal shipwreck in that sense.
Yeah.
We have been asked quite often, what object out of the many objects that you raise is the most important? Of course, it depends. I raised the Queen Nefertiti's seal, so I might say this is the one, but that's a personal reason. But in general, I think the most important might be, in our minds, is this tablet, the oldest book, as we sometimes say, ever found. Okay, it's not really a book, it's a tablet. So, and how it's used, and there were, scratches inside, and there was wax put in, and with a stylus, there were the records made. Now, talking about it, probably this was the logbook of the captain that probably was keeping a daily log of the objects. So after the waxing, and he puts in, and he closes it, whatever that he has written is safely protected. I often ask myself, and I'm sure a lot of people are asking too, what is the most important discovery of mankind from the beginning? Is the steam engine, are the other engines, or going to the sky? I have only one answer in my mind. It's the discovery of sail and discovery of sailing and seafaring. Because until the sail was discovered, the travel around was very difficult, and on the horses or cows, on things, very short distances with very limited stuff. Okay, at the beginning of 20th century, the steam engine and automobiles were discovered, but it still is limited. But the instant the man discovered sail and was able to use that incredible power of sail, the world was open to him. You just make a ship, put a mast, put the sails, the world is yours. You can go anywhere you want. Uluburun Wreck is a similar example. We believe there were 3 merchants on the ship, and they just started from Egypt and going around and trading. It was very international. I mean, even recently, when you start to travel, there are customs and things and then the difficulties. But those days, they were so much more international. And of course, with the sailing, there were cultures being spread around. They were buying something one point and selling at another. They were having ideas in one location and telling about that discovery at other places. And I think for the evolvement of mankind, the sail and the seafaring was the most important thing. What did I think about those people, the sailors of the ship or people of Uluburun? I respect them. I personally believe that the people who lived at Uluburun time were smarter than us. Okay, at this stage we're going to space, we have now all these electronics, robots and things, but I think if the mankind is improving every year this much, I think Bronze Age time they were improving about this much. And there are still so many things about the Bronze Age that we cannot really understand. For example, I raised one of the many hematite seals. Now, hematite is the seal that's made of hematite, and it's a very, very hard stone. And this is one of the examples of the hematite seal that has been, I think, larger than the original size. The original size of this one was only this much, a few centimeters. And when we raised it, of course, for recording, we need to do a copying of the designs on it. With today's technology, with magnifiers, with glasses and things. We had a hard time to, do the things what the ancient tradesmen did on this stone. Now, that's 3,400 years ago, and they have not even yet found iron. Yes, it is Bronze Age, but bronze is not that strong a metal. So how did they put all these details, drawings on an object like this? I dove on Uluburun 11 years, and the diving was very exciting, but I had one very eerie moment. I went down, and of course, all my friends are excavating at different parts. Of course, it's not like the time that the ship went, but I felt like I was on the ship, because here I go at one location, there are the belongings of one of the merchants there with his saws, his tools, and his scales. And you move a little bit further, then there are the remains of another merchant. Right there again, the scales and other artifacts. Then you move, and then there's something from a captain maybe. Then at one moment I felt like I went 34 centuries and I was right on the ship, and the ship was kind of sailing. Well, maybe being on the rocks for 11 years, we did go a little bit crazy, so that was maybe the effect of that. I've been doing nautical archaeology dives since I graduated from university all my life, but there is no shipwreck like Uluburun. Unfortunately, I don't think another one will ever come, or I will be able to dive. So all of the Uluburun dive members have these fondest memories about Uluburun. 11 years, that was our lives. And director of the project, Cemal Pulak, most of the season did not even go away from the camp. The full 3 months he was on those rocks. That was his world. Now that we have studied all the artifacts, Cemal is almost certain that there are more of the artifacts down below. And we joke about the possibility of going there one day and see what more can be there.